Welcome to the data overview for Hopewell Middle School presented by Cheryl Moss. This presentation is a 3-year data overview for the administrators and teachers at Hopewell Middle School. The purpose of this presentation is to inform our stakeholders of 3-year data collected from 2014 to 2017 at Hopewell Middle School. The data will include demographics as well as a summary of student achievement results on the Georgia Milestone Math and English Language Arts assessments. We will use this data to measure program and instructional effectiveness, show trends, strengths, and areas of growth, as well as suggestions for academic improvement. Hopewell Middle School is located in Alpharetta, Georgia. The current student enrollment at Hopewell Middle School is 1,443 students, an increase from 1,331 students in 2014. This shows an overall increase of 8% in student enrollment. The student demographic data for all 3 years shows an increase in multiracial, Asian, and white student, with the white student showing the most significant increase of 112 students. The data also shows an overall decrease in students eligible for free reduced lunch and limited English proficiency. However, if the trend continues, students with disability will increase in the coming years. This is evident from the 1.3% increase in students with disability over the 3-year period. Summarizing our student demographic data, there has been a slight decrease, 8% in enrollment numbers over the past 3 years. The Asian and white population has a slight increase for all 3 years. Also, the number of students receiving free or reduced lunch is slightly decreasing, and the number of students with disability is slightly increasing. Hopewell Middle School Georgia Milestone results for Math and English Language Arts. This is the school compared to the district and state. In all 3 grade levels over the 3-year period, Hopewell Middle School outperformed the district and state in English Language Arts and Math in the Georgia Milestone Assessment. The data shows that our 6th grade students' scores range from 60.15% to 69.5% for students meeting or exceeding standards. These scores are much higher than the district and state assessment scores for similar students. Our 7th grade ELA students had a similar performance with 67.7%, 64.6%, and 64% of our students meeting and or exceeding the standards on the Georgia Milestone Assessment. The data shows that our students once again outperformed their peers in all 3 years. The data for the 8th grade ELA students had the highest grade level over the 3-year period, with 72.5% of our students meeting and or exceeding standard in the 2015-2016 school year. Our 8th grade students also outperformed the district and state assessment scores in English Language Arts. Overall, for the 3-year period, students at Hopewell Middle School had 2 of their highest performance scores in the 2015-2016 school year, with our 6th grade students having a 69.5% and our 8th grade students a 72.5% of their students meeting or exceeding standards. Now examining our Georgia Milestone Assessment score for math. The Georgia Milestone Assessment performance of our 6th grade students showed Hopewell Middle School outperforming the district by more than 20% in each of the 3 years. Our 7th grade math students also outperformed the district and state by double digits for student meeting or exceeding standards. Our 8th grade students also outperformed the district and state with a 64.9%, 67.3%, and 69.5% score compared to the district and state percentage, which ranged in the 40 and 30%. Overall, for all 3 years, our 7th grade students had the highest performance in 2015 to 2016 with 73.7%. The data shows 8th grade math score had a 4.6% gain over the 3-year period. 6th grade math, Georgia Milestone, had a 4.9 decrease in scores over the 3-year period. This is a summary of our data comparing our school to the county and different grade levels. Now, we look at the data for the 2015-2016 Georgia Milestone results in all subject area. For the 2015-2016 Hopewell Middle School end of grade performance by subject, at the beginning, as a beginning learner, Hopewell Middle School had a 7.5% in English Language Arts, 22.3% in Developing Learner, 52% as a Proficient Learner, and 18.2% as Distinguished Learner. In Math, Beginning Learner was at 6.3%, Developing Learner at 20.8%, Proficient Learner at 39.2%, and Distinguished Learner at 33.6%. For the English Language Arts and Math Georgia Milestone Assessment, Developing, Proficient, and Distinguished Learners are categorized as meeting or exceeding standards. In Science and Social Studies, our Science beginning learners were 11.1%, Developing Learners were 19.5%, Proficient 46.7%, and Distinguished 22.6%. For Social Studies, our beginning learners were 8.2%, Developing Learners 24.5%, Proficient Learners 36%, and Distinguished Learner 31.3%. As we examine the data for students with disability, we see that our beginning learners were at 43% for English Language Arts, 35% for Developing Learners, 18% for Proficient Learners, and only 2.8% for Distinguished Learners. In Math, our beginning learners were at 37.1%, Developing Learners at 42.1%, Proficient Learners at 15.7%, and Distinguished at 5%. In Science, our beginning learners were at 44.7%, Developing Learners at 29.1%, Proficient Learners at 21.3%, and our Distinguished Learners at 5%. Social Studies had the least number of Proficient and Distinguished Learners, with 38% at Beginning Learners, 39.4% at Developing Learners, 13.4% at Proficient Learners, and 0% Distinguished Learners. Looking at our students with limited English proficiency, we had 40% as Beginning Learners, 27% Developing Learners, 29% Proficient Learners, and 0.3% Distinguished Learners for English Language Arts. In Math, we had 25% Beginning Learners, 41.7% Developing Learners, 18.8% Proficient Learners, and 14.6% Distinguished Learners. For Science, we had 43.8% Beginning Learners. Developing, we had 20.8%, Proficient 22.9%, and Distinguished only 12.5%. In Social Studies, Beginning Learners were at 34.1%, Developing 29.5%, Proficient 25%, and Distinguished Learner 11.4%. So for our limited English proficiency students, distinguished learners were the lowest percent at just 2.3%. Economically disadvantaged students, we had 23% in English language arts at the beginning level or beginning learner, 36.2% developing learners, proficient learners 35.7%, and distinguished learner had the lowest amount at 5.1% for English language arts. For math, beginning learners were at 19.9%, developing learners at 35.7%, proficient learners at 33.7%, and distinguished learners at 10.7%. In science and social studies, we had 29.4% of our students at the beginning level and 25.8% developing learners, 38.7% proficient learners, and 6.2% the data for our students that did not meet standards. If we look at our Black population and our Hispanic population in science and social studies, we can see that 24.6% of our Black students did not meet standards, and 26.8% of our Hispanic students did not meet standard for science. For social studies, our Black students, we had 15.9% students that did not meet standards and 19% of our Hispanic students. Our Asian students, along with our white students, continue to outperform the Black and Hispanic students. So summarizing the data, we see that overall Hopewell Middle School has over 60% of our students at the proficient or distinguished learners in every subject. The gifted and special education account for 49.1% of our student population. The percentage of students with learning disability, the students below proficiency, is approximately 77% in English language arts, science, and social studies. Percentage of students with limited English proficiency, these students below proficiency is approximately 65% in English language arts, science, and social studies. The percentage of economically disadvantaged students below proficiency is approximately 58% in English language arts, science, and social studies. Our Black and Hispanic students continue to struggle with science and social studies at high levels, and we continue to have an achievement gap. Now, as we examine the recommendations for improvement, incorporate an approved program that will teach reading skills in all subject area. Also, we could collaborate with PLC grade level and SEC teachers, including having vertical team planning, continued implementation of personalized learning, professional development to learn the process of analyzing data and how to use an approved platform with this data. Now we will compare Hopewell Middle School 3 years CCRPI scores with the state and district. And our 3-year comparison of CCRPI are as follows. Hopewell Middle School received an A rating for the 2015-2016 school year. The overall performance of Hopewell Middle School was higher than the state and system. During the 2 previous years, the school rating was a B at 88.3% and 86.8% respectively. Although the school rating declined from 2014 to 2015 by 1.5%, there's an increase from 2015 to 2016 school year by 3.4%. Improvement summary or improvement task. Hopewell Middle School is a high achieving school as reported by the state of Georgia in the release of the CCRPI report. Hopewell Middle School does have some achievement gaps in our subgroup that need to be addressed and implement a plan for improvement. And finally, The recognition of a data team could help the staff learn the process, have buy-in, and provide skills necessary to feel successful.